Across Europe and the United States, something unusual began to happen in March 2026. EV showrooms started seeing a splurge in customers. Waiting lists stretched into months. Tesla's European sales tripled year on year. On top of that, BYD actually overtook Tesla in Europe, not once, but twice in consecutive months. And almost none of it had anything to do with government schemes, a new subsidy, or a climate summit. In fact, it seems like it had everything to do with this. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched strikes against Iran. Within hours, both sides had moved to restrict passage through the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow checkpoint just 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, through which 17 to 21 million barrels of oil pass every single day. That's roughly 20% of the entire world's oil supply. The International Energy Agency called what followed the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market.
The world is facing the biggest energy crisis in the history.
Brent crude breached $100 per barrel. Gas prices jumped almost overnight. In the US, prices now average $4.52 per gallon, a 51.6% jump over the pre-war costs. This was not a slow, managed increase. This was a spike, sharp and sudden, and felt viscerally by anyone who had to fill a car. That is exactly the moment when consumer behavior changes fastest. This is how the Iran war accidentally became the biggest market driver for electric vehicles in history. Who won, who lost, and what the numbers tell us about what comes next. Let's start with geography because it matters. The Strait of Hormuz sits between Iran on one side and the UAE and Oman on the other. At its narrowest, it's 33 kilometers wide. But the navigable shipping channels for oil tankers sit at just 3 kilometers wide in each direction, with a buffer zone between them. Every day, according to the US Energy Information Administration, roughly 17 to 21 million barrels of crude oil pass through it. About 20 to 21% of global petroleum liquids consumption. Saudi Arabia, Iraq, the UAE, and Kuwait. Almost all of their oil exports go through this one passage. When the conflict began and the strait was blockaded by both sides, the IEA activated its emergency response protocol. Strategic petroleum reserves for member nations were released. It wasn't enough to stop the price spike. Within weeks, global energy markets were in genuine disruption. Drivers across Europe and North America were seeing numbers at the forecourt that they had never seen before. The data that followed is remarkable. In the European Union, several countries recorded an EV sales surge of 51% year on year in March 2026, according to the ACEA, the European Automobile Manufacturers Association. A total of 224,000 new electric vehicles were registered in a single month across the bloc. The Q1 2026 total for all of Europe reached 500,000 EVs, with France, Germany, Italy, Poland, and Spain each recording at least 40% growth compared to Q1 2025. For Tesla, which had been struggling in Europe through much of 2025, the rebound was dramatic. Global deliveries in Q1 2026 hit 358,023, up 6.3% year on year according to Tesla's own delivery report. In France, Tesla registrations tripled in March versus March 2025. In Germany, they quadrupled. In the UK, leasing company Octopus Electric Vehicles reported a 36% spike in inquiries since the conflict began. BYD's numbers were even more striking. European registrations for the Chinese EV manufacturer were up 162.7% in January and February 2026 combined, compared to the same period in 2025. In Germany, the continent's largest automaker, BYD registrations jumped 327% in March alone. And for 2 consecutive months, February and March 2026, BYD outsold Tesla in Europe. The company responded by raising its 2026 overseas sale forecast from 1.3 million to 1.5 million vehicles. In the UK, something historic happened in Q1 2026. Used electric vehicles reached price parity with petrol cars for the first time. The average used EV dropped to £15,486. The average used gas car rose to £15,727. Daily used EV sales jumped from 787 in February to 1,074 in March, a 36% increase in a single month. Renault reported EV website inquiries up 42% compared to January. So why does a conflict in the Middle East drive EV adoptions faster than years of climate policy? The answer is largely psychological. When fuel prices rise gradually through carbon taxes, emission trading schemes, fuel duty increases, people adjust. They budget around it. The change feels manageable. But when prices spike suddenly following an event outside of your control, the cost of inaction becomes immediate and visible. You're standing in front of your car, watching a number you've never seen before. The question of whether to switch to an EV becomes, why haven't you done this already? For EVs, public charging is frankly a mess in most of Europe, with prices per kilowatt hour ranging from about 40 cents to over $1, depending on how fast the charger is, its location, and sometimes time of day. When using fast chargers, this roughly presents pricing parity with gas cars per mile. However, home EV chargers are where we see the biggest difference. Equivalent mileage can cost roughly a tenth of the price of gas. And with new EVs costing the same or now even less than gas equivalents, the savings are potentially extensive. With most people around the world now facing years of high inflation, these numbers are becoming a serious draw. This recent spike in gas prices may have been the final straw for many. Critically, automakers reported the uptick wasn't limited to existing EV-curious buyers. Fleet buyers, used car customers, and mainstream family car shoppers all showed accelerated interest. Segments that had been slower to convert under years of subsidy-led campaigns. This is not the first time a conflict has reshaped the global auto industry. In October 1973, Arab members of OPEC triggered an oil embargo in response to Western support for Israel during the Yom Kippur War. In the United States, oil prices quadrupled within months. Long queues formed at gas stations across America. The American love affair with large, fuel-hungry cars, the muscle cars, the station wagons, the V8s, suddenly felt deeply irrational. US consumers shifted rapidly towards smaller, fuel-efficient Japanese imports. Toyota's US sales grew 33% in 1974, in the middle of a recession. Honda entered the American market and never looked back. The crisis didn't just shift purchasing for a quarter, it renewed the competitive map of the global auto industry for a generation. Detroit never fully recovered the ground it lost to Japan in those years. The parallel with 2026 isn't perfect, but the structural dynamic is identical. A sudden conflict-driven energy shock forces consumers to rethink the value of alternatives, and some of them don't go back. The Iran war was not fought over electric vehicles. It was not designed to rescue Tesla's European sales figures, or to accelerate BYD's global expansion, or to make the EV industry's numbers look good. If anything, it was ironically the old trope of countries fighting over access to that oil. But markets don't always respond as intended. They respond to price signals, and the Strait of Hormuz delivered the most powerful price signal the global auto industry had seen in years. Tesla needed a rebound story in Europe. BYD needed proof it could win in Western markets at scale. The EV industry needed a jolt that government policy had been struggling to provide. In an extraordinary irony, they all got what they needed. Not from a climate summit, not from a subsidies package, not from a landmark trade deal, from a conflict in the Persian Gulf. The question that remains, when the guns go quiet and the oil prices normalise, do the converts stay? History suggests many will. However, whether you like it or not, the automotive industry already is switching to batteries and other green tech. It's not just that every driver who switched during the fuel shock is also potentially a long-term EV convert, it's that this conflict has likely accelerated EV adoption, and there will likely not be a gas and diesel market to go back to. The Iran war, whatever its outcome, may have done more for the electric vehicle transition than 10 years of climate legislation. It didn't mean to, but that's how the markets, or rather people, work.